back. There
Uh-huh.
are there are a group of people that's how they want to express themselves and work in a wet darkroom.
Mm-hmm.
I am not one of them.
Nor
Yeah,
I.
I am very happy that I'm not into the darkroom bit anymore.
Me too.
Yeah. So yeah, I can take a look, Tony, and let you know if you want to bring it by, or you know, I
Okay,
come over to your place.
later on next week, because this weekend and Monday and Tuesday are have a tight schedule.
Yeah, I'm
I'll
sort of,
give you a call or
give me a call and I can take a look. We're setting up the Steichen House on the park that I'm working at. Um, it might be, some of the stuff might be good in the display for the darkroom section.
Hmm.
Uh, I just had another guy that actually is right down the block from me, gave me a bunch of 4x5 glass negatives
Hmm.
and a bunch of other darkroom stuff and some old cameras that we're going to probably add to that display as well. So,
Hmm. From your collection?
not my collection. I got rid of
Okay.
most of my collection at an auction.
Okay.
And I gave away my whole darkroom setup. I had a 4x5 and a smaller and larger. Had to give all that. I gave that to a guy. Well, he's probably joined the panel.
Yeah,
He came
I
down
haven't
from
seen him work on here yet, but no.
yeah. He came and took all my darkroom equipment, and then he bought a couple of large antique cameras that I had too.
Hmm.
So I didn't have room. I didn't have room for them here. So
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah. So yeah. Well, good. Oh yeah. Now we're up there. 35 people.
And
Well,
it's 10 o'clock.
yeah, it's 10 o'clock. Time to start. So, all right, welcome everybody to the digital forum for the last day of February. Um, I'm not sure how it's going to go out, whether it's going to be a lamb or or crazy. I know we're supposed to get snow, but I hear it's just still in Madison area and not coming down. So hopefully we won't get any. I don't want snow anymore. Today we got a interesting program with Dan Anderson up in Door County. Dan's I've known him a long time, it seems. One of my groups had gone up there and visited his place in Door County, and he showed off his darkroom and his printing stuff and all that. We had him on, I don't know if it was a year ago, doing drone photography. He's really gotten into drones. But today we brought him in to talk about what he's best at, and that's his printing, and how he sets up his prints and does all that. So it should be a very interesting topic. I used to print a lot. I'm not printing as much anymore, and I should be. So this will be fun to listen to. I've already, just from working with him the other day, he showed me a bunch of new tips that I'm going to put into practice. So with that, Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. But you got to figure out how you can see my screen.
Yep.
So
you have to hit the share button again, that green button in the bottom center. Yep. There you go.
Are you there now?
Yep. Yep.
Oh. All right.
So
then I should,
now you just gotta.
I gotta minimize all this stuff then.
Yeah.
All right, that looks more like it. All right, so I'm going to start with a keynote presentation, and then it's kind of strange to be talking about printing. No, I gotta get rid of that. Oh. So it's kind of that may ring again, so that he couldn't have picked the worst time to call. He can be stubborn. But anyway, I'll hit play here and you can see that.
Yep. Looks good.
So I'm gonna be talking about printing, and it's a little bit different to talk about printing when I can't show you prints. And so it's going to be a keynote presentation. Yeah. I'm going to have to just tell him I'll call him back. Hang on. Hey, Dick, I'm in a meeting. I'll have to call you back. All right. He'd keep trying. So anyway, so I'm gonna be going through this, but at the end of this program, I'm going to be going and opening up Photoshop to show you two examples, one of which is one of my favorite little tricks to add local contrast to my prints. And the other one is a way that I like to convert things to black and white from a color image. And it's going to be using luminosity masks. And so I can show you how I can do it really, really fast and very effectively, much quicker than my old way, which is using the black and white adjustment layer in Photoshop. So anyway, let's get started. So we can talk about a successful image. The real thing is you've got to know what you're trying to say, and you want to have good concepts. I plan a lot, but there's nothing secret about anything in Photoshop to do that. The print is really all important. It's what the end story is all about. And how I started to print is I looked at a lot of people's prints. And when I say a lot of people, the only people that I knew that had prints back then, and I'm talking about in the 70s, were Ansel Adams, Minor White, Win Bullock, people like that. Anytime that I saw an exhibition, I would go there, and that allowed me to see what was possible. And so that's how I started to print. So I've been a printmaker all the time. That was really what I was interested in. So I'm going to show you a failure here. This is a barn up here in Northern Door, and I kept driving by it, and it would be losing boards and losing foundational boards. And so finally I looked at this and I said, the only thing that is holding this entire upper floor, which all it is a roof, is 3 boards. That was it in one corner. And so I decided, all right, I've got to shoot that. So I did. And of course, this is from a black and white negative. I was going to go back and redo it because I could see that this wasn't getting what I wanted. And of course, it had fallen down. So I then decided, all right, the thing that I don't like about this is that the sky itself is merging too closely with the building itself. And on first glimpse, you really can't see that the building is in such precarious shape. So now this is in Photoshop. I darkened the sky, and now, of course, you can at least see that the building is kind of all alone. But I've never shown this to anybody. I've never made another print, and it's what I consider a failure. So we've gone through several eras. We went through the analog era. That's when I grew up in Photoshop, in photography. And printmaking then was really, really hard. Color, I never, ever could master. And so I just quit doing it because I never could make a color print back in the Cibachrome days that I was happy with. So I gave up. Black and white, that was a different story. I learned how to make a black and white print that I was very satisfied with. However, it was a big learning curve. And so color slides were a lot easier for people to make. And that was a much easier expression that they could show off what they felt in terms of creativity. Well, then we moved to the digital era, and now social media is easily the most common expression, the final expression. Images are very easy to come by now. It does not take a lot of experience, and you can get to be a very excellent editor reasonably fast. So the problem with that is now that everybody can do it. And it's hard to stand out in this big bunch of people that can do very adequate to very good photography. Well, printmaking is again back as the much more difficult expression in this day. So now to be a printmaker is once again a very, very good way to make your work stand out among all the rest of really, really good images. Now, back in the 80s, I was very interested in the English cathedrals. I was influenced by Frederick Evans, an English photographer who worked around 1900, something like that. And he made a lot of images within the cathedrals. He had a lot of atmosphere in there because at that era they were, they were illuminating by candles, and so there was a lot of smoke in the cathedrals. So there was a lot of atmosphere within the cathedrals themselves. So I decided, all right, I want to go over there and I want to make 8x10 black and white negative images in these places too. So I looked at his work very carefully to A, be inspired, and B, to make sure that I was not going to go back and just take another shot that he had already taken. So I knew his work and I knew what not to repeat. This is Ely Cathedral, and this is a negative that I made in 1983, I think. And it's a darkroom print that I made. And I liked it. I still do, except that it had one big problem for me, and that was all the dark areas in the middle. I did my best in the darkroom to bring all those details out, but it was a losing battle because most of you know what I mean by working in the wet darkroom. You have to dodge all the dark areas here to lighten them up. And of course, to try to dodge that is a nightmare because this would be a very difficult thing to do. So when it came time to start thinking about some of these old negatives, I pulled this out, scanned it, and digitized it. And then I made this print. And now it's, to me, much more balanced, and I now can see the dark areas the way I wanted to. So the digital era of printmaking for me has been a very, very helpful era to be in because I have so much more control over exactly what I want to have in my prints. And I definitely am a control freak. I want things to be where I want them, how I want them. So I am a big fan of the digital aspects of, or the digital era. So prints begin in your mind. I've got to make choices before I even go out there. I have to decide how big could this print possibly be? Because the bigger the size that you make your print, the more precise everything has to be right from the beginning, from the time that you start working with your camera. All of your camera work has to be very precise. More precise, the bigger your print wants to be. Well, I don't know how big the print is going to be. I can easily make a 24 by 30 print here in my studio. So everything that I put in front of my camera, I have to decide that I've got to be so careful so that I could print it to this size or bigger if I want to. So I have to decide how much resolution I need, how much sharpness I want, things like that. Composition, of course, is always, always very critical. I'm not going to spend really any time on this color management aspect. Most of you know what I mean by monitor calibration and color spaces and things like that. But I've got other things that I'd rather turn my attention to. So I'm just going to say this is important, but it's something that you can look up and learn on your own without any problem. So you have to know what your own definition of a good print is. You're the only one that has to worry about that too. If you want it real dark, real light, how simple, how it should feel, all those are your choices, and you get to do all those things, and nobody can tell you what's right and what's wrong. So I start crafting this print as soon as I see it on my screen, on my monitor. The critical thing here is perception. How do you look at what's sitting on your raw file now? How do you deal with that? So perception and problem recognition are absolutely key. they're much more important than any Photoshop knowledge, because if you are not able to recognize and diagnose problems like problems in brightness, problems in contrast, uneven tonalities, anything like this, if you don't recognize them, you're never going to be able to figure out what Photoshop tool to bring to bear and fix them. So in my courses, I always emphasize learn how to be very critical of your own work. When I say critical, I'm not talking about, oh, woe is me, I can't do anything right, my work is terrible. That's not critical. Critical means looking at it and deciding, all right, is it dark enough? Is it light enough? Does it feel right enough? And when you think about your own work in terms like that, you can analyze it and you can figure out, no, the upper left is too dark, or it's too light, or it's too something. And so once you realize that you have the ability to fix it, now you have to learn Photoshop or whatever you're using and bring that to bear and correct these problems that you are able to see. So I'm going to show you a couple of very, very subtle examples here. This is a shot I took a couple of years ago about a really neat thunderstorm that was going over Door County. And I was running away from this thing because it was chasing me. I wanted to get my drone up in the air, but it was coming fast, and I wanted to see the structure of the clouds before it enveloped me in rain, which it eventually did. My drone came down absolutely soaking wet, but hey, that's not an issue. So I made this, and this is the issue. This is the image that is on Facebook and on my social media, and I liked it very much. But when I made a print, something just didn't feel quite right. So all I did in this image was add a little bit more contrast in the sky, darken the bottom edge a little bit, and that rain shield that is on the right side of the image, I darkened that too. So I made this change, and that made all the difference in terms of the print. So it's a subtle change, but it was a big deal change as far as the way I looked at the finished print. Well, all right. So I'm going to talk about how I'm dealing. I thought another slide was coming here, so that kind of threw me for a second. So this is looking down at some ice shoves here so far this year in 2026. I was rather captivated by the ice, the pancake ice, and how different it was from the right to left. Well, that was fine, but when I got back into my studio and working on the screen, I realized that this was too complicated. It was just never going to go anywhere, and so I never did anything further with it. But when I was in the air over the ice, I realized the right side of this frame is very interesting, and those kind of like ice arrows that are going away towards the top, those intrigued the heck out of me. So I made another shot of it. I turned my drone sideways looking down and took this, and this is the finished print, but you can see that this is more complete. And you can see that I've changed things in terms of contrast, in terms of accenting the color. And so this would be a much more complete image. And this one I do print and I do show. So my typical workflow for creating this master file is that I begin with a scan. I have old material, old negatives that I like to go back to, although I don't much anymore because I'm drowning in new work. I don't have time to do that, and go to the old things and redevelop those either. So most of it is raw files, and I develop them in Lightroom. And I use Lightroom more and more as time goes on. The more they do things in Lightroom, the better it is, and the more I can do there. But still, I grew up in Photoshop. Lightroom wasn't even invented when I started working in Photoshop. So that's my go-to thing. So I always work in 16-bit, and I'm going to show you a reason why I do that a little bit later in this program. And I'm working in either Adobe 1998 color space or ProPhoto RGB color space. And I evaluate it, and I think about it, and then I crop and or distort if necessary. By distort, I mean if the horizon isn't perfect, I'm going to distort the whole thing to make it perfect. If I don't like something that is in a corner, I'll distort that away or something like that. But those are some of the things that I'll do at this point. Then I'm going to start going to global and then finally local edits. I want to use a non-destructive workflow with layers and adjustment layers. I want to make sure that I can use adjustment layers whenever possible because of file size. My file sizes are large because I'm working in 16-bit. So if I'm going to use a layer in 16-bit, every time I add a new layer, it doubles the file size. Adjustment layers are very small in terms of adding to file size. So I like to use those a lot more. So I save this as unflattened, and I say a PSD or a TIFF. For other reasons, now I always save this master file as a TIFF. So this consistent workflow works in another addition to your style too, because if you do the same things consistently, your look is going to develop into that. Your style is slowly developing. And most people think that a style or a look is a good thing. I could care less. I know I have one, but it's because I do the same thing over and over again to each image because I'm used to it. So we've talked about consistent workflow. Editing an image can never be repeated. So I save and back up my work a lot. Working incrementally is very important for me, and solving one problem at a time is very important to me. And I'll show you some examples of that. But this is the process where you're going to express your vision. This is how you complete your vision, how you transmit your vision to somebody else that is looking at your work. This is where your creativity can shine. And as I said, this is where your personal style evolves, whether you think that's important or not. It just happens whether you want to or not. So my most used Photoshop tools are, I mentioned that I use adjustment layers whenever I can. A curves adjustment layer, which I always abbreviate as CAL, I use that more than any other particular adjustment layer of anything that I use. So I use it with various blending modes. And when I show you an example later on at the end of this, I'll show you why blending modes with a curves adjustment layer is a very nice thing to know how to do and know that it exists. I do use a hue saturation adjustment layer, usually to de-blue things. Even though my winter things are very dominated in blue, a summer landscape with an over blue sky is something that I'm not a fan of. And so I usually de-blue things so that the blue doesn't overpower it. Even with winter things, I am de-bluing it with a hue saturation tool. Some of the other things, like, well, I'm not, again, distort and warp tools, I'll show you maybe a little bit of that. I can't remember. Luminosity masks. Those are something that I use quite a bit, but I kind of use them in cycles. Sometimes I get into a kick where I'm using luminosity masks in every edit, and then all of a sudden, a month or two later, I'll realize, boy, I haven't used a luminosity mask for a long time. So they are just a tool, and there are different people that make panels that will with an action make a luminosity mask for you. You never, ever want to start making your own luminosity masks because it can take hours to construct them. Whereas if you have either Tony Kuiper's panel or Greg Bentz's panel, it's just a click and you have that particular luminosity mask. And these I am going to show you at the last part of our talk today. I use a color clone layer, and I think I'm going to be able to show you that in something coming up very soon. Selections and Gaussian blurs and things like that. We'll talk about that a little bit too. Photoshop can do the same thing in many different ways. You don't have to know them all. All you have to do is know one or two and be proficient in them, because I could think of maybe 4 ways to fix a contrast problem, but I really apply only curves, and that's what I do. So I think I know about 5 to 8% of what Photoshop is capable of. However, it's the 5 to 8% that I need to know to get to the results that I am happy with. So if it does other things, fine. Other people can do that. I'm not interested. I know how to do things to get where I want to go. All right, so global edits. So curves adjustment layers, I set a white and a black point. I think you know what I mean by that, but I'm going to probably be doing that later on to show you. White balance, I never worry about until I am here doing global edits. I never monkey with the white balance in my camera when I'm taking the picture because I'm always shooting in RAW, and a white balance is something that you can correct with ease once you get back into your computer. So curves adjustment layers for global contrast, you have to be aware of normal or luminosity mode considerations when you're using curves to correct contrast. And I'm going to show you exactly why you're going to need to do that at the last part of this. Hue saturation, I already told you I use that. Color balance, adjustment layers, I use some of that. Photoshop always is coming up with new things, and they've just come up with 3 new adjustment layers: color and vibrance, clarity and dehaze, and grain. Now, clarity and dehaze are really nice to have as an adjustment layer in Photoshop, and I'm using them a lot. I use clarity and dehaze when I'm working in Lightroom a fair amount, but now if I've not quite done it exactly the way I want, I don't have to go back into Lightroom. I have this new clarity and dehaze as a new tool adjustment layer in Photoshop, and I really like that. Grain, I could care less about. I never want to add grain, and I'm denoising things anyway, so I want things smooth, and so I never want grain. So that one is lost on me. I don't know why it's there, but I don't use it. All right, so here is a global adjusted with just global edits. This is in Ellison Bay about a month ago. There were a bunch of ice volcanoes that appeared right in town, and I could drive within 100 yards of them, and I would sit there and fly my drone over them. And this is one of the things that I found there and took a picture of. I'm using a color clone tool here, and I can't show you how I do it. All I can do is explain. The upper left corner of this particular image was extremely gray. It had no blue in it whatsoever. And that was just the way the ice was and the way the ice was reflecting sky and the time of day. Well, it looked out of place. And when I would look at this, I liked what I saw. I liked the composition, but my eye would keep going to that upper left gray corner. And so I then used a color clone and stole color from a blue point anywhere here. I picked that color, and then I painted that blue into the upper left corner to balance the blue color from right to left, up and down, and things like that. So this is an explanation of how I would use color cloning or stealing color. Some people call it that. But this is an example of how I would do that and why it was necessary for me. Local edits are another thing. I do these a lot. I use selections of local regions in an image and then use masking tools, luminosity mask, curves, hue saturation, anything that I need to do. Correct contrast is so critical in getting the proper emotional feel in my work. My feelings are the principal things that drive how I edit something. And one of those feelings means that I want things to be sort of balanced. I don't want one part of the image to overpower another. So I'm always balancing things, and I'm balancing things with curves, with whatever I need. So the bottom here is I'm talking about advanced techniques such as luminosity painting, soft light, layers for dodging and burning. I cannot remember the last time I used those tools, because new tools have come along that made it easier to get the same things done. So I just don't use luminosity painting at all. It's still a valuable tool, and I'm sure that I would put it to good use, but I don't think of it anymore because it's not sitting in the front of my brain as I'm editing. It's still a great tool, but I seem to get things done in another way now. So that's what I mean by some tools kind of ebb and flow in terms of my workflow. All right. So this is something that I just want to talk about a little bit. But a week and a half ago now, we had a very, very nice, light, soft 2 to 3 inch snow that covered everything here in Door County with just not a whole deep snowfall either, but it was really gorgeous. So I decided that I would take a walk out into my woods. This is a couple 100 yards away from my house, and I was armed only with my iPhone. That's all. So this is an iPhone shot. And when I got to this point, I looked at it, and these curved branches at the bottom, those big curved, those trees going off into the upper left, and all the rest, very intriguing to me. So I quickly kind of knelt down and took a shot like this, turned around and walked a few yards away, and all of a sudden, the sun made a little appearance. And so I looked back, and now there were shadows in this. So I quickly went back and I made this. This was a repeat of the thing that I had just done, but now the light, the quality of the light was so much better. Okay, so this is the finished image. This has been edited, printed, and I'm pleased with every part of this. However, when I first looked at the raw file on my screen, I realized that the bottom third, or almost the bottom half, was way, way brighter than anything else. The only thing that is literal in terms of the original raw file are those 2 big trees going from the middle of the frame towards the upper left. Those are exactly how they were in my raw file. The bottom third here, I darkened quite a bit, took contrast away from it because those shadows wanted to go much, much darker. Well, that didn't feel right to me. So this is darkened and lowered contrast. Now the upper 2/3 or the upper half, I should say, and the right 2/3 was much, much darker than this. It was darker than I wanted. And so you had this over dark top and over bright bottom, and it wasn't balanced. And as I said before, balance is something that appeals to me, and I want it. So I did a selection of the top third, or the top part that I've explained, and all I really did there, I didn't brighten it, but I took the shadow slider and the black slider and yanked them to the right until it looked good. And this is how, to me, it looked good. Then I made a selection of the bottom where all the bright is, and I then lowered the contrast here and lowered the exposure right here with curves. That left this looking really good, except for that curved branch that's going from the lower right edge and curving around and touching those 2 big trunks. That made, when I raised the shadows, it killed all the little subtle shadows in that snow on top of that branch. So then I had to go with a black brush, enlarge this very much, and paint that effect out and bring it back to what it was originally. So that is my explanation of how this came to be and how I managed to get the balance of the darks and the lights to my satisfaction. I don't want this to look like you could say, oh, look at how nicely he's taken away the hard shadows in the top and help the bright aspects in the bottom. No, I don't want you to notice anything. I want you to look at this as the way it could have been. And it could have been that way, but it wasn't. It was much more contrasting. So this is what I mean by local adjustments, local edits. So we've talked about Photoshop so far. If I'm talking about printing now, this is how I go about it. I edit a file until it's done. And that edit will be what you see on Facebook. It will be what's on my website. However, once I go, and I've learned this with many bitter lessons. When I go to printing that, even though my monitor is well calibrated, everything is with color management is done as well as I can do it. It never, and I mean never, looks right when I make a print. The biggest reason is that when you're looking at a computer image, you're looking at an image that is being transmissed and lit from behind. When you're looking at a print, you are looking at something that is reflected light, and that is a big difference. So I'm never finished when I start printing. So I start printing small, and I always have to do work on it. And I print and fix something, and then I look at the next print, and okay, I fixed that, but now there's something else that I don't like. So I do that until the feel of it looks the same to me as the feel that I had on my monitor. Now I'm satisfied, and so then I'm finished and I start printing. I'm well, I'll get to that in a minute. So here's something that I can show you what I ended up doing. This is a drone shot from this last November. It's one of my favorite shots from that trip to the Badlands of Utah. And I'm making this particular, this is what's on Facebook, and this is what's on my website. Well, when I made a print of it, my first impression was, oh, this is really great. Then I started to look and say, the sky, especially the upper right sky, is just not balanced, and it's pulling my eye away from the important thing here, which is all these mesas and how the sun is just hitting them. That's what the shot is about. And I felt that I was being pulled away from that by the upper right, the sky. So all I did was to make a selection of the top 2/3 of the sky and did that. I'm sure I'm going to go back. I think you'll be able to see the difference, although it's not a huge difference. But when I made a print of this, now it looked balanced, and my eye was drawn to the center of this picture again and stayed there. So this is what I mean by things that when I'm printing, they don't quite fit, and I have to make subtle changes. Here's something else. A couple years ago, I used to do photo tours all over, from South America to Greenland. And this was the very last one that I did in May of 24. I don't know if any of you were on that trip, but we had a very, very good time. This is at the end of the Dingle Peninsula, and I was scouting for little places that I could bring the group next week. So I decided that I read about this in a guidebook, that this fort was on top of this hill. So I said, oh, I'll climb up there and take some pictures from the top of that fort. And then I knew that the distant head of the island was going to be in the distance, and I was sure that was going to look pretty cool from up there too. All right, so I decided that I would hike up there. This is 2 years, not quite 2 years ago. So I got to the base of this mountain. It wasn't a hill anymore when I got there. It was now a mountain. And I looked, and I was going to have to crawl over a whole bunch of fences, and I knew I was going to be in private property. I saw nobody to ask permission. I was going to have to meander through sheep fields and cow fields and things like that. And I saw no good way that I was going to easily get to the top here. So I'm thinking, I think I'm going to rethink this because I've got a drone in my bag. And so I got my drone out and I flew up here. This is actually the second time I did, because the first time was in the middle of the day and the light was not right. So I came back late in the afternoon and didn't even think about climbing up there now. I just flew up here and made this composition. So you can see the old fort in the foreground and all the cool things about the Dingle Peninsula in the background. I had a wonderful sunset. I mean, I couldn't have been more pleased. This is what's on Facebook, and this is what's on my website. When I printed it, all of a sudden it just didn't look dramatic enough. It just didn't fit. It just didn't feel right. So I redid some curves. I darkened the sky. I added a little bit more warmth to the sky. And this is now the finished print. And of course, this is the one that felt better to me than this. Very subtle changes, but this is what I mean about things needing something to be done when you're printing. All right. So what do I do when I'm preparing to print? Each image is very different and needs its own approach. I flatten the master file, I convert it. I didn't say this before, but I always use ProPhoto RGB because it's in 16-bit when I am editing. You should not use ProPhoto RGB if you are editing in 8-bit. I don't ever recommend editing in 8-bit, but that's another story. So I leave it in ProPhoto. My printer can't really swallow ProPhoto, and so my printing action changes it to Adobe 1998, but I always leave it in 16-bit. I resize that master file to my specific print size. I change the resolution to what my printer likes best, which for me, with my Epson P7000, is a 360 DPI. And then I sharpen it for this size with, well, I use one action to do it with a press of a button, but there are many different suitable sharpening methods. I have mine and I use it all the time. I've used it forever. So I have never really experimented with others. I am satisfied with the one that I use. So then I start printing and evaluate it like I've already told you. And finally, I save this file without flattening. And if it's going to be a 16:20 print, I will save it with the negative number or the print number, and then it will say 16:20. And it will then be saved in a PSD, not a TIFF anymore. So various things that make me know which is my print file and which is a master file. Having said that, I almost never, ever go back and redo anything with that original master file, but I never throw them away, even though they're huge sometimes. Sometimes they can be almost 2 gigabytes because I've done that much work to them. So storage is not an issue. I just have big hard drives. So I just never have the guts to throw anything away. So even though probably I'm never going to go back to that, and I'm just going to use the print file to make prints. All right, so then when I'm done with that, I mount it on an archival mount board, always white. I overmat it, double overmat it if it's going to be for sale or in my studio, and then frame it. I used to do all my own framing, and I've gotten out of that job. If people would buy things for me and wanted them framed, I would frame them because I could do that. And I decided that was one thing that I didn't want to do anymore. So now I never sell anything framed. You can bring it to a framer and they can do that. It's something I lost my source here in Door County that would put frames together for me because I used to buy them chopped. Chopped means that they're coming with their 45-degree angle. They are sized, but they're just sticks. And I had a source that would put them all together in his frame shop for $5. Well, that was wonderful. And so I could save a lot of money by doing that, but I don't do that anymore. Okay, so I want to show you a couple of things. These, with one exception, have already been printed, but they're on my website. These next few are finished images from 2026. I think they're all drone images too. Having said that, I started using my drone first in 2018. And as I'm getting older and as I'm getting more used to my drone, it has slowly evolved into now, I would say that 90% of my photographic output is with my drone. And that doesn't mean that it always looked like a drone, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. However, what I'm looking for in this particular picture, when I was flying over it, I was struck by the wonderful evening that I had, and I wanted to make sure that I had that feel to it. Anderson Dock, the Hardy Gallery, is of course the center here. That's the real star of the show. But then I realized that as I'm looking and flying over this, I have never seen pancake ice this even and this uniform and this pretty ever. And so that is the secondary subject. That's the secondary star of this show. I wanted to show how smooth and lovely that pancake ice was. And by the way, I went back here next day to do it in different light. It was all gone. I mean, it was still there, but it was messy looking, and it didn't have any of this look to it then. So those were my thoughts when I was photographing it and when I was printing it. So this is Ellison Bay. I told you, I showed you a picture from up above with these ice volcanoes. And so they've been here now, they're still here. And they've been here for a good 3 weeks. And I visit them every 4 or 5 days. They're never the same. This was after a snowfall and kind of a heavier snow. I mean, 4, 5, 6 inches, but it was very light. And then a screaming wind came by and blew a lot of this snow. Let's see who this is. This is nobody. So it blew a lot of the snow into these patterns. And so I went down, I said, oh, this is really nice. So again, I've flown around these enough to know where they look good. And I realized that my drone should be about 3 feet off the ice. And that's what this is. And with my wide angle lens on my drone, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to exaggerate this wind-blown drift that is coming towards me here. I'm not far away from it either. And as I said, I'm only about 3 feet off the ice here. And I wanted to do that so that I could make the ice volcano tips break the skyline. And then the evening was lovely. It was just a perfect sunset, And so this is what you're looking at. So this would be a finished image, much more contrasty than the raw image was, much more contrasty and heavily de-blued. It wanted to be so incredibly blue. And I didn't like that. So that's another thing that I did with this. Well, this is about 3 weeks ago also. We had heavy snow, and then the winds came, and this is near the ferry dock in Gills Rock. I was flying around there, and I could see that the wind had scoured the snow off of the ice, and the textures and the patterns of the clear ice were really cool. So I'm flying around slowly, looking straight down, and then I saw this. And I'm thinking, holy cow, that looks like a giant spoon sitting there. And it looks like it's filled with snow. So I said, all right, that is obviously going to be my shot. And then it had some of these wind-blown sharp things coming down towards it. So this is looking absolutely straight down. And this is the result. Now, you can't tell how big this is. And I made a lot of different shots of this. I went down much closer so that there's nothing except the ice in the spoon sitting there. But this is the one that I felt said the best things that I wanted to say about it. You might think, all right, how big is this spoon? Well, it's not a spoon, of course. It's just a hunk of ice that from the air looks just like a spoon. And I would say that it is about 10 feet from top to bottom. So it's not small at all. But this is the cool things that my drone can show me. And it's one of the things that drove me nuts when I tried to print this, because this is how it looks online. When I printed this, for some reason, the blues just bloomed, and it was incredibly blue and way, way too much for me. So I had to heavily de-blue this to make the print look like the image that you're seeing here. I can't explain this. It's just what happens. I do know that I'm following very strict color management regulations. I've got all the tools. Most things work, but my printer loves to show me blue, and I'm not a fan. And so I have to do things, but this is just me. I have to deal with this. So this is the new one. This is from well, let's see, what is it? It's not quite 11 o'clock in the morning. So this is probably 14 hours old. So this is probably around maybe a little longer than that. I took this last evening about 5:15. So this is as new as I can get to you. I obviously have not printed this yet, but I flew out there yesterday to see if any ice shoves had happened, and I was so happy that I did, because here is one of the nicest ice shoves that I've seen in Door County, plus this area. I'm sure some of you know where Door Bluff Park is in Ellison Bay. And these bluffs are on the shoreline of that park. The park is made up of the trees that you see here. Well, I used to go down. The all-time ice shove that I've ever seen here was, I think, in 2015. And I had to work, and that was pre-drone. So I had to work my way down these slopes and these cliffs to get out on the ice, put my crampons on and monkey around there. But in 2015, that's 11, 12 years ago now, I could do that. Well, this is 12 or 13 years later. I know I wouldn't want to do this anymore. And of course, now with my drone, I don't have to do this anymore. So I'm sitting in my car flying when I'm doing this. And my drone has 3 lenses in it. I'm flying a Mavic 4 Pro. I have the equivalent to a 28 millimeter lens. I have the equivalent of a 70 millimeter lens, and I have the equivalent of a 160 millimeter lens. This is the 160 millimeter equivalent lens. They're lenses, and they're almost like 3 different cameras. This is not a digital, extrapolation. This is an actual lens that the camera can change on the fly. So you can see that with a equivalent 160 millimeter lens, I'd have to be walking out way out on the ice to get this compression. And this compression it really looks good. It makes the ice look a lot more dramatic because it compresses it looking toward shore. Anyway, this is my latest shot, and I've probably got 80 other compositions or shots, not different ones, of this area. I was out there at 4 o'clock, and then I went back there around 5:15 because I knew the light would be warming up by then. And so this is what I got. So I guess I have nothing more to say, but I am sure that obviously I have not printed this yet. I put it on Facebook earlier this morning, so if you want to see it again, it's going to be on Facebook. That's my latest shot on there. But I know that I'm going to have problems with this when I print it, because I know that the blues will just overpower it and I'll have to de-blue it. Well, okay, so be it. Anyway. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about conversion to black and white. I don't know how many people still make black and white conversions, but I think that it's very important. I don't do it often, but when I do, and I'm going to show you the last thing that we're going to do today is convert something to black and white. And you can see how easy it's going to be when I use a luminosity mask approach to doing that. So you absolutely must keep it in 16-bit if you're going to make a black and white conversion digitally. If you use any curves, if you twist these pixels around, and do a lot of editing, you are going to get caught out with banding in smooth areas like the sky, in smooth clouds. You will get caught out, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So I don't really think about black and white or color when I'm shooting anymore. It's just a raw image. I just think about composition. I think about lines, whatever I have to think about compositionally, that's what I do. So I always begin by making a good color print, and then I started to always use Photoshop's black and white adjustment layer, and I still use that a lot. But now I use specific luminosity masks as new files. Luminosity masks are just that. They're a mask. And they're a mask that you can load into curves, They're a mask that you can load into hue saturation, any adjustment layer. They are made to be made with an adjustment layer as a mask. Well, I figured out a way, and it's so simple, to make them as a new file with the same 16-bit, the same megapixels, but it's a brand new file. And I'll show you exactly what I do to do that. So let's continue. I want to show you this. And this is where I got caught out and where I learned a bitter lesson, because I am making this is from Patagonia, and I can't remember if I was there in 2013, 14, one of those 2 years. I was with my group, and this is a whatever Canon digital, at that time, very fine camera. And this is in the Torres de Paine National Park, and these are the cuernos, the horns. We had this wonderful cloudy day, very windy. The wind was blowing from left to right, but I was very interested in the clouds that were hanging down in the foothills there. So that's really what I'm looking at. And this is the raw image that I come home with. I never noticed that there was an absolute killer cloud, a round cloud around the tip of the topmost horn there. Now that I pointed out, I think you can see it there, but I'm going to edit the heck out of this and make sure that you see it. So here is the final print. The other thing that was such a big issue here in terms of the edits were the dark granite on the tips of the horns looks very dark, wonderful. That's the way it's supposed to look. But the mid-gray granite in the middle, to my eye, standing there, it looked almost silvery white, and my raw file did not do that justice at all. So after lots of work, this is my final edit. And I am very pleased with this. I'm printing it, and I'm printing this in a 16 by 20, and am patting myself in the back on how wonderful this looks. And then I started looking at it close. I don't know on this image that you can see what I'm talking about here, but take a look at, you can now see that really gorgeous looking round cloud that is surrounding the peak. Look right above that, at that dark cloud. Can you see bands there? I'm going to show you them in a bigger image in a minute. And look at the upper right corner, those dark clouds. There's bands there. Well, they don't belong there. So take a look at this shot. Now here is just a blow up of the banding that's going on in those dark clouds. I think you should be able to see it.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
so
you can
fine.
see it.
You can?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, all right.
At least I can see it.
Yes, yes. I know I made a 16 by 20 print and am hand holding it, and I did not see them until I started to really look at it. And then as soon as I saw this, I said, well, okay, I have to start all over again. And that's going to be a disaster, because it took me a couple of hours at least to edit everything and get it to this point. Even though I had all of my adjustment layers and things like that, I was going to have to go back and redo every single one of those and try to recreate it. It was going to take hours, and I knew I'd never get quite back to this spot. So I started to think out of the box, and I decided to do this. I could tell there were no other bands other than in these smooth gray clouds. So I decided, all right, I'm going to make a new full layer above all of this stuff, and I'm going to apply a Gaussian blur to it, and I'm going to blur it. And so I did, and I blurred it carefully with however many pixels, and I don't remember how many there were, until the banding was gone and the clouds looked smooth. And of course, now everything was out of focus. Well, I'm not going to let it stay like that. So I added a layer mask to that new layer that was blurred and filled it with black. And then I carefully painted in the dark clouds with white and revealed this new smooth cloud. And lo and behold, all of my bands were gone. Now, it only worked because of where they were. So here is the final image. and there are no bands visible here at all. So I did not have to redo it, but the bitter lesson was never, ever make a black and white digital print unless you're in 16-bit. 16-bit, I would never have had this issue. It just wouldn't have had any problems with it at all. So, all right. So what am I going to show you? Yes. So I want to show you this. I'm going to show you this at the end here. We're already close to an hour, so I got to go quick here. So I'm going to show you how I make this black and white from this color image. And we're going to make this within 2 minutes. Black and white images are something that I very much enjoy. This goes back a few years in a swampy area near my house here. Here is the positive digital image of what I saw. New, fresh snow, sun on the branches in the foreground, but the back trees are sort of in shadow and you can't see them too clearly. I decided that I wanted to make a negative print. A negative print, and I did this in the darkroom quite often. It was a difficult thing to do in the darkroom, very difficult. It would take me the better part of a day to do this. I'm not going to describe it because I don't do it anymore, and neither are you going to ever do it. So, but in the digital terms, you can do it with a push of a button. You can go from here to here. This is a negative image. All the things that were pure white are now pure black. All the things that were real dark are real white. And I'm thinking, I like this a lot. The only thing I don't like is the bottom. I think that I want to have the real positive image of those branches on the ground along with the negative print on the top. So I took these two files, put them on top of each other, and painted in the positive to end up with this. And you can see I painted in some of the trunks of the trees too. I went from there to there. But by and large, the whole top 3/4 of this is the negative aspect, and the bottom and a little bit of the trunks are the positive. Well, I like this print. It's very different. It's gotten a lot of comments, you know. Here's another thing. This is another version. This is an 8x10 view camera negative of the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado. I'm there early in the morning, and I had obviously a killer sky. I've got a wonderful group of dunes, and I was very happy with this. But as I lived with this over the years, and this was a darkroom print. Over the years, I'm realizing, you know, from a graphic standpoint, you would like to see, preferably, you would like to see the brightest thing in the middle and not the brightest thing on the edges. You would want to hold your viewer's eye in the center here. So what I did is made a negative print of this. And here's that negative print. All is well here except for the sky. Now I've changed the lighting here from a morning shot where the sun is coming from the right to an afternoon shot where the sun is coming from the left with a push of a button. And this looks totally realistic. I'm gonna open up the shadows, you know, a little bit, but I have to do something with the sky. So I have a negative print file now on my computer, and I have a positive print. And I put them together as layers in one group, and I paint in the sky from the positive to this. And when I'm doing that, do you see that hard cutting line of the top dune and the way it hits with the sky? There's no way that I could paint that right. So I had to spill painting in a little bit from the positive sky into the top of that dune. And here's the result. Now, and I think you'll agree that it helped a lot. So there's my finished image. The bottom is a negative print. The top is my original positive. And the very top bit of that dune is positive also. So it's a look that I don't do this very often, but it is so much fun to do that I just mention it and tell you that it is possible. And I'm going to show you how to do it with luminosity masks that is really easy. Okay, my current printer is a P7000, and I use a pigmented ink set, which I've used for decades now. Well, yeah, decades. My go-to papers are Canson Baryta Photographique and Moab LaSalle Exhibition. I use Moab LaSalle Exhibition for everything up to a 16 by 20 print. That still gets put on Canson. Canson's is more expensive. The Moab LaSalle is just a wonderful paper. I could use it for everything, but habit reigns in my brain. And so I keep using my Canson for a 16 by 20 or a bigger print. I have used in the past, don't use them anymore, Ilford's Gold Fiber Silk, various Epson paper, Moab and Trata. I've used that Canson Platin Fiber Rag. Don't use it anymore. None of those do I use anymore. So I mount all of my work on as a dry mounted print on an archival board. I'm very consistent in terms of the board. It's got to be museum quality, bright white. I don't frame anymore, but all my work is framed. And then I print to be under lighting, like in my studio here. That's the way I do it. I'm going to skip through a lot of these. These are prints. This is a river in Iceland. I can't speak too much about printing, so I'm just going to show them to you. This is, again, a river in Iceland with my drone looking straight down. This, by the way, is all water, all water. The only land here is that little tiny corner on the lower left. That is shore. The rest of this is river. And the river coming from a glacier brings down these various currents and various sediments that precipitate out as the river is flowing by. You can't see anything like this unless you have a drone looking straight down. Even in a helicopter, you can't get low enough to do something like this. Another drone shot in Iceland. I'm up in the clouds here, and I like the feel of the clouds. I'll spend a little time on this one now. Here is something that I call a time blend. So I found these hoodoos in New Mexico, maybe 20 years ago. And that's when I first visited them. And I figured out a way using Google Earth to get within a mile of them. And so I said, well, all right, I like this geology, and I'm sure there's going to be things there that are hoodoos. So I went out there. I spent 3 days out here, 3 days and 2 nights. It took me a while to get my 4-wheel truck camper back in here, and I still had about a 3/4 mile hike to get to this area. When I'm there, all of a sudden I discovered this incredible, this still is the coolest hoodoo that I've ever seen. It's about 20 plus feet high, and you can see it. This is where it looks the skinniest. I made some other shots from the left side looking from left to right. But anyway, I looked at this and I'm looking at the sky, and I figured that I'm looking south from this vantage point, and I'm thinking, I want to see the Milky Way in this shot. This would be a perfect thing to do with the Milky Way. Well, how am I going to do that? So I had to figure out, all right, I'm going to come back here when it's getting dark. But, I had a headlamp, but I didn't want to go both ways in pitch black. So I came here just as the sun was setting. And so I did some photography as the sun was setting and things like that. Then I took this shot. I've got my camera on its tripod. And by the way, I knew I was going to be here till like 2 in the morning. And I got here maybe at 5 or 6. So I had to be prepared. So I brought a camp chair. I brought snacks. I brought a couple of cans of cold beer. And I brought my iPad with a book on it. And so when I got here, I'm working around. Finally, I knew exactly where the Milky Way was going to be, set my camera on a tripod, put my chair near it, got all my little stuff there. So I have my little nest sitting there so I can wait. And I would say around 8 o'clock, I took this shot. And this is probably at ISO 100. And I would say it's maybe 3 seconds, something like that, because I wanted to make sure that I had good detail and texture in the hoodoo and everything else. The sky, of course, is blown out. The stars aren't even showing yet. So after I have this in the can, I turn my camera off, put the lens cover on, sit down, have my little dinner, have a couple of beers, eat everything, start reading my book, and wait until maybe like 1 in the morning. At 1 in the morning, I took this shot. Okay. I wanted the Milky Way, which needs point sources for the stars. I knew from experience that I couldn't do any more than around a 15-second exposure. So this goes back a long ways in digital. So high ISOs were noisy. So I knew I would get that, but I knew that the noises would be so bad with that I couldn't do the foreground justice with that. And so this shot is probably, I can't remember if it's ISO 3200 or 6400. It's one of those two. And it's a 15-second exposure. So now I have everything the way I want, except I have no foreground. Well, I've already got my shot of the foreground. So when I get home, I put those two files together as a layer and blended them together and have this.
Mm.
Recently, I'm looking at this on screen. The print looks fine, but recently I'm looking at this on screen and I'm thinking to myself, this isn't balanced enough, because I want you to be able to see the structure in the foreground, but I don't want you to spend a lot of time with it. So I just took the foreground and just knocked it down a little bit like that. And I think this looks a little bit more like what my brain says should be realistic. All right, so we're done with that. So to finish off, I'm going to close this or minimize this, and I'm going to open up a couple of examples here in Photoshop. The first one is going to be this one. All right. You can see the image on screen now?
Yep, looks good.
All right. And can you see right now, I've got a whole bunch of your thumbnails in my Photoshop panels. How can I get rid of, well, I know how. I can put them over there. That's no problem.
Yeah, you can either put them, or there is
well,
a way to
that's
get
fine.
rid of the panel.
No, that's just, it's not an issue. All I
Yeah.
want you to see is the panel here. This is how I set up my Photoshop panel and the image. So local edits. I love to do this particular local edit a lot. I'm going to grab my lasso tool and I'm looking at this. This is again this could have been late 2025 up in Gills Rock. Ice had covered this dock. So I've got my drone sitting. My drone was not happy where I am here. It was scolding me for being too low. It said, I'm going to land if you don't get me up, Well, I didn't want to land here. But anyway, I'm down low enough so that I can eliminate buildings and trees that were behind this. All I wanted was the cool sky in here. So I'm looking, can you see my cursor moving around here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
This area is not contrasty enough. So I'm going to make a very rough selection right about like this. It does not have to be very careful at all. So I'm going to go to a curves adjustment layer here, and here it is. And you can see this histogram, this gray histogram is showing that there are no real whites. We've got plenty of room on the white, and there are no real blacks. There's plenty of room on the left. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make a mistake and show you why you have to change it out of a normal blend mode. So I'm going to start I always start this way. I take this white slider and I'm not even looking at what I'm doing. I'm looking at the image and I look until about there. And then I look back and I said, okay, I've almost set a pure white point. You can already see problems that are starting to exist here. And now I'm going to start making a black point, but I'm going to watch this junction right here where it's white and then goes to gray. I want to set a black point so that sort of goes away. And I'll start doing that. And I'm watching just that spot. And right there, it looks okay. But you can see a big flaw here. When you're changing the contrast of a curve, if you leave it in normal blend mode, you are also changing the color contrast. I don't want that. I want to say to Photoshop, leave my colors alone. And so what I'm going to do is to go to this normal blend mode, go all the way down to luminosity, which tells Photoshop, leave my colors be. And so now if we turn it off and on, you can see that the colors really are not changing, but look at how nice the local contrast has gotten. Now, there are still, if we just show the mask itself, whoop, that's wrong. Why did it do that?
Yeah, I hate when it jumps
I
like
I
that.
hit something down here. We can get it back like that. Okay, so I wanted to just hit this with Option click, and there's my mask. I've got to feather that. So I'm going to feather it by going up to here, feather, blur, Gaussian blur, and 50, well, let's make it 70 just for the heck of it. Oh, 7. No, I went 70. Okay. See here, when I'm doing this, you can watch me make mistakes too, which I do a lot. So that's fine. And now it's just totally gone. So if I turn that eyeball off and on, you can see that the local contrast is much nicer. A very subtle thing, but here's where perception comes into play. If you didn't realize that the local contrast could be improved, you'd never think to use this tool to improve on it. Now that I see that, I'm looking at here, the icicles on that little column. Well, they look kind of flat also. I could do it all over again with a new adjustment layer, but I could make sure that I could go B for brush, make sure my foreground color is black, and then I'm going to go 100%, 30%. No, I'm going to go all the way to 100%. And with the brush, I'm going to paint that same thing. Whoop. I hit black and no. Oh. There, now it'll work. So if I turn that off and on, you can see those two areas now have a lot of nice contrast. We'll do one more real quick one, and that is right here. Just about like that. And this one, I know from experience, needs a new adjustment layer, curves again. Here we're going to go to luminosity layer blend mode right away. And again, I'm going to set a white point and see where that is. Okay, I don't want to go any further than that. And now I'm going to match it with a black point until that goes almost totally away and you can't see the junction. It's still there. And so we're going to, right this minute, we'll go up to blur it, Gaussian blur, 70 millimeters, great. And now I'll go off and on, and you can see that I've changed the contrast there. I could even go further. If I don't like it, I could increase it a little bit more. I could bring the black point in a little bit more or less, but I'll bring it into about there. And now things are reasonably balanced. So this is, I've never seen anybody else describe this tool, this little technique. It's not a tool, it's using curves adjustment layers in luminosity blend mode. But it's a technique that I use a very great amount on not every edit, but I use it a lot. So it's something that put in the back of your head, I find it very, very valuable. All right, we won't save it. And the last thing that I'm going to show you is the shape of wind. Okay. We'll make it that big. That'll show everything just the way I want. All right, so we want to convert this to a black and white image. And as I told you, we could do it with the typical black and white adjustment layer, but I'm not going to do that. You know how that works. You know how that looks. It's tedious, and you have to do a lot of other work with it later. I am going to go to luminosity masks here. This is Greg Benz's panel. That's Gregbenz, Greg Benz. Jeff said he got it for free. I know it's a saleable thing, but it's in the $30 range, so it's reasonably cheap. I have Tony Kuiper's TK Actions, and I have Greg Benz. And for this, Greg Benz is a little easier to use. Basic luminosity masks are a little easier to use in this one than Tony Kuiper's. But I use both. So I'm going to just show you what is a luminosity mask itself. So if we wanted, let's just say, you can see my cursor going in the shadow here of this dune face. If I wanted to do something with that dune face, but don't want to do anything in the bright area here, I could make a very detailed selection here, but it would be hard to do. If I use a luminosity mask to do that, it's self-feathering, and if I hit D, that's the basic darks luminosity mask. So all the darkest areas in this mask are the brightest white. The brightest areas in this, and this is the basic one, all the brightest areas are going to be black. And if you did a curves adjustment layer, and all I'd have to do is hit this box right here, and this would load this mask into a curves adjustment layer. That's the typical way to use this. However, I want to restrict this even more because I don't want the mid-grays or anything. So I'll go to D2, which is going to restrict to the darker areas. It'll take a second for that to happen. There. Now it's restricting it to just the really dark areas, but it's still not restricting enough. And so I'll go D3. And now what I really want is to restrict it to this area. I could use this, and I would look at a D4, and I would say, oh, okay, I'm going to use this one. And so now I can change whatever I want to change in just the darkest areas of the dune face here with an adjustment layer by just clicking this button right here, and this mask would appear in the mask icon of an adjustment layer. And that's how simple it would be. To physically build this luminosity mask would take at least a half hour, at least. But we just did it in a button. With this X, I'll get rid of that altogether. I want to make a black and white picture of this file. So I'm going to go to the lights because I want a realistic one. Well, okay, that looks decent. Let's restrict it to the white areas a little bit more. That's too much. So I'm thinking black and white thoughts now, and I am only thinking about the dunes right here. Forget the sky at this point. We'll deal with them in a bit. Right now, I have to change this. And you see these little tools here. Here is a level adjustment. And I'm going to open up that levels adjustment, and I'm going to say, okay, look at all the tones that we have to play with here. I'm going to darken the dune face here by doing this. I'm going to slide this down to about there. I'm going to take the white slider and bring it up to where it looks really cool, which is right about there. I could play with the midtones a little bit. I could change them like that. I could have a little higher key aspect to it, which I think I like. And I mean, what did it take? 30 seconds? And now I have the basic black and white of these dunes absolutely the way I like it. Now, I think the sky looks too bright. Realistically, I could open this up as a file, which I'm going to show you how to do in a second, how easy it is. And I could then go to and adjust the sky. But I'm going to do it in two steps. But remember, I'm doing it just because to show you something. All right. We want this file right now as I'm looking down here. It is 249 megabytes. It's a big file. It's in 16-bit, and it's in size 16 by 21, and it is sized and sharpened for my printer, which is at 360 DPI. So that file is in 16-bit, is 249 megabytes. I want to have this as the new file. I don't want it as a luminosity mask. I want it as a luminosity layer. All I have to do is to go up to layer and hit flatten image. And there it is. a brand new file. I have to change the name of it, or it will save it and the color image will be gone. But if we look down here, it is still 249.2 megabytes. So now I have, in seconds, I have something that I like a lot, but I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to take color away and just put Dunes. And I'm going to hit Save, and it'll save it to that little examples folder. And I'm not going to close it. I'm just going to diminish this because we're going to use that in just a second. All right, so now I'm going to open this again. I'm doing this in more than one steps just to sort of, show you what's possible and to kind of drive it into your minds a little bit too. So here again, we're not going to worry about the dark luminosity mask because we want a luminosity layer. And so I'm going to go to the same one. There it is. And I'm going to open up my levels again. Now I'm ignoring the dunes. All I'm looking at is the sky. And so I'm going to say, all right, let's start the same way. And I'm going to look at that sky about like so. Maybe I want to have that a little darker. Yeah, that looks good. But maybe I should just, instead of doing the black slider, play with the midtones in the sky. And I think that looks much nicer. The dark areas on the upper right are not so dark. So everything is kind of soft, but we've got nice bright whites in there. And so I'm going to say, all right, I like this, but it's sky. So I'm going to go Layer, Flatten, and then I'm going to File, Save As. Where are we? And here I'm going to just go and say sky, and it'll save it to that folder. All right, so I'm going to be working on this, but I'm going to put them now together, and I'll show you how easy that is. So I'm going to, no, we're going to leave this big. I have to go to the other one, open this up, make it big for just a moment. I'm working around your lovely faces here. Can you see your faces there or just me?
Just you.
It's only
okay.
you. Yeah, only
No,
you
don't worry
seeing
about
the
it.
faces.
It's not an issue, really.
Yep.
Not an issue. All right, so what do I want here? I want just the dunes. That's all I care about. The sky got way too light. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go select the sky. Boom, there it is. I'm going to go to select inverse. Where's inverse? Right here. And now the dunes are selected. I'm then going to go to Layer, New, Layer via Copy. And now I have a new layer sitting here. And if I look at just that one, you can see that I've chopped out every bit of this guy, and all I have left is the dunes. And so I can make this much, much smaller now. It's going to take me a minute to do that. We'll just make it tiny up here. It's still active, and I'm going to go to my Move tool, and I'm going to go to this layer, and I'm going to drag it on top of this, and just slowly move it into place. And boom, whoop, not quite. There, it is still not right. There it is. Okay, that's how fast I could make a very effective black and white conversion using just luminosity masks, no other edits whatsoever. And the dune, if I turn that eyeball off, it goes to the original one, which isn't bad. I mean, I could fix either the dunes in this one, or I could fix the sky in this one. I just wanted to do it twice and put them on and show you how I just move the dune only, make a selection of the dune, move it over, just to show you that particular, technique that I'm using. So we're done. That's it. Any questions that you can think of?
Well, we do have one question. Do you ever use soft proofing before you print?
I do, but unfortunately, to my great embarrassment, I usually forget to do it.
Okay.
It would be a very good idea. I should do it more often, but I have to say that for the most part, I just forget to do it.
Yeah. I sort of
Yeah.
like having an actual print so that I can see it. Soft proofing works for me to a point, but
Right.
an actual small print on the same paper seems, for me,
Right.
works a lot better.
I'm the first to admit that it might save me some time because I would then start fixing things in that soft proof before I printed even my first test print.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hey, it's just a piece of paper, so
Right.
Dan,
Yeah.
I have a little question discussion I'd like to talk about. I consider it the elephant in the room when it comes to printing. As we know, almost all beginning people who print come out with too dark prints.
right.
And I know the answer is, reduce when you calibrate your monitor, reduce the color. I have calibrated my
No,
monitor.
not the color, just the luminosity.
The luminosity, right, right.
Just the brightness.
But, and I've printed for a lot of years. I calibrate my printer, and I still end up, sounds like I have a similar Photoshop strategy to yours. I keep things in the original file with a print group that has all the adjustment layers for printing that I can turn on and off depending on how I'm saving the photo. But my question is, when I had the printer calibrated the luminosity very dark, I had trouble reading things online and stuff like that. And I hated it being dark monitors when I knew my monitor was capable of much brighter. And
Right.
so today I keep my calibration at a very high luminosity, and I just play with the colors, like you said, a print small until I get things I rent
Right.
that I save. So
Right.
am I expecting too much from the industry to expect to be able to print close, maybe not the colors, might need adjustment or whatever, print to what I see on my screen?
All right, so I'll address that. So first of all, when you buy any monitor, that monitor usually comes way too blue and way too bright. And so for some reason, manufacturers think that this is the way that they like things. And I guess for a marketing thing, they can say, oh, ours has got 2,000 nits of light, and it will light 4 rooms away. Well, I don't want mine that bright. So I also calibrate my monitor just like you do. However, my monitor calibration does not address luminosity, does not address brightness. And so I have to manually, which I'm kind of happy that it does, I manually have to darken the brightness in my my settings if I open up system settings, I have to go to displays, and you see where my brightness is set? Way down. But that's what you're seeing right now too. So and it's so easy to calibrate that too. It takes me, the first time I did that, it took me maybe a couple of prints. And since we're in Photoshop, I'm going to open this up. So can you all see this?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm looking at this little section right here. I'll make this bigger. I'm looking right here, and I make a print. And if I know on my monitor, or I'll make a print of this test pattern, and if I can't see these clearly, or if I can see them all the way and there's no blacks right here, I will darken the monitor brightness down and reprint it. And it takes me maybe 2 or 3 prints of this test print before the test print in my hand looks exactly like this does on the screen. And that means my monitor has now been de-brightened. It's been dimmed down to the point where my print is matching the print I already have in my hand. Does that make sense?
So do you just switch your color profiles for when you're working that you need a brighter screen to read things and such?
No. For me, you're looking at my calibrated, darkened screen. You're looking at it. So I'm able to live with this. I know that it's very, very dim, but for me, I'm going to get rid of this so you can just see that my desktop. I'll get rid of this too. Don't save. We'll get rid of that. And I'll get rid of Greg Benz's panel by just clicking on the L that's luminescent. So this is what I see on my desktop. If I go out of Photoshop, whoop, go back to this, there. Okay, so this is how I live. Now I've got EarthDesk as a screensaver, and it's, you can see it. It's just something I like. It's not necessary. You can see how messy my screen is, how many files I've got sitting there. So hey, this is how I live, But I can do everything I want with this luminosity on my screen. So I do not have the same issue that you have, where it gets so dark where you're matching prints that you can't live comfortably, with your screen. So I can't speak to what you're doing. All I can say is how I solve that problem, and the fact that my calibration device does not address brightness, which irked me when I first saw it. But then after I saw how fast it was to correct, then I don't even care about it anymore.
What brand do you use?
Oh, it's going to be up here. What's this? Spider X2 Elite. That's what I have.
I've used Spider, in most recent years I've used X-Brights, which has
Okay.
now Calibrite, I think is the company is
Right.
called.
Right. They changed owners quite often. X-Rite has swallowed up a bunch of things, but anyway, that's what I use, and I have to say that I can't remember the last time that I calibrated this monitor, because these new monitors, this is a reasonably new Apple monitor, a standalone Apple monitor, because I'm running a Mac Studio underneath it. This, that's my computer. So this is a standalone Mac monitor. And it really, once you calibrate it, it lives there. In the old CRT days, that was a different story. So I don't even know if my Spider would work on this anymore, since I've changed OSs since then.
So you keep two versions of every image that you print and sell. One is for printing and one is for online or sending to the printer or whatever.
Well, no, I don't do that. I take my print version, my print version of that file that you saw on Facebook, okay? And I change things. I usually have to add one or two adjustment layers on the top of it, and I put them in a group, and I have, that's one eyeball now, and I label that as print. And so if I have to do something else online, I just turn that eyeball off and it's back to, what it should be. That just makes my life a little easier.
That's what I've been doing.
Right.
We've got, I gotta get new glasses too. Chat is getting smaller every day. Margaret is asking, in TK9, you can adjust for the sky. Wouldn't that be easier than dragging it onto a different layer?
Absolutely. And I don't have to go to TK Actions to do that. I could have done that with that original one that I had done. I think I
Okay.
mentioned that I easily, once that's done, I could easily just make a selection of that sky and change it, and it would have worked out just fine. If I was doing it just by myself without an audience watching me, that's exactly what I would have done. I only did it twice to show you two things. A, that I was concentrating on both the dunes separately and the sky separately. And B, doing it twice so you could see me doing it twice, and then showing you how easy it was to put those together as layers and paint one of them out. That's the only reason that I did it that way. So the question is absolutely correct. But I would not have needed TK panel to do that. I could have done the same thing with Greg Benz's.
By the
Okay.
way, when you dragged and dropped that, Dan,
Yeah.
if you had held down the shift key when you drag, if two images are exactly on top of each other, if you use the shift key when you drag and drop, it puts it back in the exact place.
Would it have put it in the middle, or would it have put it in the right place at the bottom?
It'll put it in the same place that it came from, which was your
Okay,
original
all right.
image.
Yeah. Again, Photoshop does a lot of things, and a lot of things that I just forget to do. And that would
Yeah.
be that would be on the long list.
Yeah.
This one's a little harder because I know you run Apple, but it's Mike is looking. He's in the market for a new monitor. He uses a PC. Do you have any recommendations? That's a
All right. So
tough question.
I have no recommendations whatsoever because I am an Apple user, end of story. However, if you go to Greg Benz's website, look at his website. He is the guru of monitors and the new HDR aspect that some monitors can deal with. Printing cannot deal with it yet, but that's another story. I don't want to get into that. But go to his website and look under his monitor suggestions. He's always he's always testing monitors, and I don't know if he's a Mac or PC, but he's talking about different monitors that he considers to be excellent, and he finds them that are not, criminally expensive. You're
Yeah.
going to spend money for a nice monitor. This Apple monitor is they have two. And I don't want to call this their entry monitor, but this is their basic monitor, and it's like $1,400. They have their real monitor, which is $6,500. Well, I don't need that. This one works for me just fine. And you can buy monitors for huge dollars. And then I know Greg Benz because I look at his emails every once in a while when he's talking about monitors. Not that I'm interested in it, but it's just an interesting subject. So I know that he recommends some that are in that price range only, $1,000, $1,400, something like that. But that's would be my go-to recommendation to learn about monitors. Greg Benz's website.
That's good to know. I've got to admit, I use relatively inexpensive LG monitors, and they've matched up real nice once I calibrate them for my printing.
Right. So
So-
it's not necessary to spend a lot of money for monitors. And I don't want to lump everybody into my category, but my work, I do not need a super expensive monitor to get exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not doing things scientifically where the exact color is extremely meaningful to me. I don't deal in accurate color. I deal in pleasing color. And that is a very, very individualistic, amorphous definition.
Yeah. That's a good way to talk about it, because I've been happy with these monitors, and yeah, they've always matched up with my prints, at least close enough until I do that final tweaking and printing. So
Right. No matter who tells you that if you calibrate your monitor with our device and do it the way we say, your prints will come out exactly like your monitor. That is just flat out not true. And it's misinformation to tell people that, because they're two different things. One is a lit from behind and one is reflective. And those are two different animals.
Yep. Yep.
You can get them very, very close with just minor tweaking like I do, but you will never, ever get them exact.
Yeah. Yeah. You're always going to make a number of prints to get that final one. And at least you get close. And it's certainly gotten a lot better today than it was 10, 15 years ago. When
Right.
it really made a difference on buying an expensive monitor over an inexpensive one.
Well, if you go back, and a lot of us do, go back to the CRT monitor days,
Yeah.
those were another animal. I had
Yeah.
to calibrate my CRT monitor at least once a month, and I should do it once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember going through that. It was a nightmare.
Those days are gone. Right.
Things are so much better. I think I don't know if anybody else throw a question either into the chat or the Q&A. If you got questions.
I see that I've kept you an hour and 3/4, so you've stuck with me very, very well.
Yep. And not many questions, so you've covered the subject pretty well until everybody starts to try to do it, and then they'll have more questions. But it's a shame that printing seems to be a dying art in some ways. We all just look at them on our screens, but my house is loaded with prints, and I just love the way prints do look.
Well, on my walls here in my studio, there's always roughly 20 prints in 16 by 20 or bigger. And there, as long as I'm printing, there always will be. My issue is that it's a difficult thing for me to change them out, because I want to put this new one up, but I can't pick out anything that I want to take down. So that's
sort of my same problem.
Right.
I've got all my favorites up, and I don't have a bit of wall space left, and there's not a single one I want to take down.
When I have a new one that I really, really respond to, I have to make a painful choice and do. And here's another little secret. All of mine are double overmatted and framed here in my studio, but none of those overmats are attached to the mount board. So if I want to put a new one in, I have a 16 by 21 print that is mounted with a mount board that I just use as a template. And so I'll take one of these off the wall, take it out of the frame, take that print out, put the overmat on the new one, put it back in, and in 10 minutes, I've got it on the wall, framed, overmatted, and looking like it's always been there.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
if I'm selling a print to somebody, then the overmat is printed specifically to that order, and the overmat, which is cut specifically to that order, even though it's going to be identical to all of the ones in my studio, then it's attached to it on a flat basis, so it's not going to move. So that's different. But in my studio here, I change them out, not often enough, but I change them out, so I don't want to waste the overmat. Overmats are expensive.
Yep.
It's because a double overmat like I'm doing, this is not important to anybody but me, a double overmat like I'm doing is about $15 each. So the overmat itself is $30 because there's two pieces there.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to throw that away because they're eminently reusable.
Yeah, they are. And it's funny because that second map board, you're only seeing that fraction of an inch
Right.
for that same price.
That's exactly right.
Do you recommend a printer that goes up to 11 by 14?
Well, all right. So
or something bigger.
30 by 40 or bigger. I guess
totally,
you have to print 30 by 40, Dan, because you can't do that at your studio.
I cannot. No, I have a 22-inch carriage on my P7000 Epson printer. A 22-inch carriage means that I can print up to 22 inches on the short side. It's got a roll, so I could print 22 by 60 if I wanted on a roll, but I could not do 26 by 60. So the next one, you can get printers as big as you want, but I have space issues. My 22-inch printer takes a lot of room. It's a heavy sucker. And so you have to decide yourself, what is the biggest print that I want to make day in and day out? And I came down on the side that I want to make a 24 by 30 print anytime I want in-house. And so that meant that I had to have it's not a 22-inch carriage, it's a 24-inch carriage. And Epson has 17-inch carriages, 24-inch carriages. That's what I have. Then they have 36-inch carriages. And if they have a bigger one, I'm not even aware of it, but they may well.
Yeah, I think they go up to 44. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Dan,
But-
Dan, have you ever printed any really, really long prints on your printer? I've had trouble with my Epson 3800 where I can print to 17 inches, but I've tried to print like a 5-foot panorama and the drivers won't allow me to do it.
Oh, really? No, I have not had that issue. Having said that, I haven't tried to print a pano for quite some time, but I have no real reason to think that it wouldn't. I've certainly done it in the past, but I have no real need to do it right now.
Yeah, I kind of was disappointed. I printed a arc of the Milky Way about 3 feet, but I was trying to print the Mount Fitzroy from Argentina really, really wide, and it wouldn't go as wide enough to print it 17 inches high.
Did you call Epson?
No, I didn't. Because it's an older printer, I don't know if
Yeah,
they would even.
Gemma,
I don't care.
you-
That would be my first thing that I would have done. Call Epson.
Yeah.
Because if there's a new driver that would fix it, they would tell you that in a heartbeat.
I've searched for new drivers online, but like I said, the printer's about 10 years old and
Yeah,
they
Gemma,
stopped
did you say a 3800?
38, the Pro 3880.
Yeah, 3880. Yeah, I think part of your problem probably is because I had the 3800. Is since that paper doesn't normally take roll as well, the guides aren't set up as well as like Dan's is. Because I had one similar to Dan, a 24-inch Epson, and I could print as long as I wanted. I've printed 6-7 feet and it never missed, but that 3880 was never set up to do great long roll stuff.
Don't you
So do
hate
you-
don't you hate using roll paper though?
Yeah, I
can't
did and I
stand it.
didn't.
It just it's curls all. Oh, I hate it.
Yeah, when you get near the end of that roll, that was always the biggest problem was,
Right.
yeah, it would really curl up. But
I mean, I always could deal with it, but it was just annoyance.
yeah,
So
I
did-
had big
are
enough
your
areas in
printers-
my studio for it. So,
So are
um,
your printers roll printers or flat printers?
They're both.
They're both. So
yeah,
when I get ready to buy my next printer, I should look for that?
Oh yeah, right. My P7000, the papers that I use virtually all the time are all sheet paper. 17 by 22 is my go-to for any 16 by 21 print, and those are flat boxed flat papers cut to that size, and that's 99% of the work that I print is done like that. But I've got a big roll carrier there, and I got rolls sitting here. So if I need it, I've got it.
yeah, yeah. It's just you got to remember too that you're only feeding one sheet at a time on that
Right.
big printer.
Right.
Where
Which is-
the
which
other
is-
printers are you could be putting multiple sheets in. So
And,
the
and
3880
I print one at a
is-
time. So
yeah, it's I don't think that printer would ever print a decent long photo because it's just not really set up for it.
right.
And that's pretty old. It's paper's just slipping in there when it goes through.
Mhm.
So that's probably your problem more than anything with it. Just from me knowing that I had a 3800 that I had to
Yeah.
trash because I couldn't get the print driver anymore.
I mean, printers are a necessary evil
Yep.
because finicky. They don't want to sit around unused. They get clogged if you sit around unused too much. So they're not easy things to deal with, and they're just a necessary evil.
Yeah,
But we
And-
can still
and-
do it.
yeah,
Well,
right.
I have no intentions of quitting.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
I just got one quick question. You're the one that put me onto Canson papers years ago when I started printing. And I still use the photographic 2 or whatever you pronounce it. But are you doing any matte paperwork or not?
No. I tried matte papers when I first started getting into digital. However, I wanted my work, the new work, to fit in with my existing darkroom printing. And those prints were all done on Ilford's, I forget the name of it, but Ilford's fiber or something or other.
Yeah.
And that was always a kind of a luster type paper. It wasn't high gloss, but
Right.
it wasn't matte either. And so I gravitated towards finding new papers that would fit alongside. If you had both of them sitting side by side on the table, you would not remark, oh my goodness, how different this paper looks like from the other one. You could just look at the image itself. And so Canson in Baryta Photographique and Moab LaSalle Luster are papers that I use now.
Great. It was great. It was great advice you gave me 15 years ago, and I'm still with it. So thank
Yeah.
you.
And Mark, when it says you're looking for a printer 11 by 14 or up to 11 by 14, just look at the Epson line of printers. I still think they're one of the best printers out there.
Well, I agree, and I'll add one thing to that. There are, as far as I can tell, there's only 2 brands that you should even consider. Number 1 is Epson, and number 2 is Canon.
How do you
Yeah.
think they compare?
Pardon?
How do you think they compare?
I have no clue. All I'm doing is going by reviews and other people that print on Canon, and I've seen their work, and their work is just fine. But I have never ever used anything except Epson, so I am not the person to say that, oh, Canon can't do this or can do that. I can tell you one reason why when my previous Epson, I don't know if this is germane to anybody else, but printing heads are expensive. My original, the printer that I had before this one, and this one's maybe 7, 8 years old now, it all of a sudden the print head died. It gave lines across my prints that could not be fixed. And so they said, all right, you're going to need a new print head. So I said, okay, fine, let's order a print head. And they said, do you want to know how much it cost? I said, well, yeah, maybe I should know that. And they said, it's going to be $2,400. And so I'm thinking, $2,400. I can buy a brand new printer for $2,800. So guess what I did? I bought the P7000, which was a new one. So when I was doing that, I started to research other printer manufacturers, and I discovered that Epson's print head was very expensive, but very long lasting. Canon's printer for my 24-inch carriage was only in the high 5s or 600. So I'm thinking, oh, well, why wouldn't I buy a Canon since I know that it can do a fine job? Then talking to a Canon rep, he admitted that their printer heads must be changed like every other year. That's how fast they would wear out. So I'm thinking, okay, well, then that leaves Canon out. I'll go back to the one I'm used to, and that's Epson, because they last a long time. But when they do go out, that printer head is expensive. And I live in Door County. The guy that did mine had to come from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So it's not a cheap thing.
No,
You are not going to
not
load.
easy.
You are not going to load your 24-inch carriage printer into the back of your car and drive it to the service center.
nope. It's always a problem. But I can tell you, I'll agree with Dan that Canon does a nice job. Allied Digital Photo in Germantown uses both Canon and Epson, and he gets pretty much the same results no matter which printer he uses. And he ran into the same problem that his printer heads would go bad because he's printing commercially, he's printing every day with them.
Right.
The Epson got expensive, so he bought the Canon thinking, oh yeah, he's going to save money. But then all of a sudden he's replacing the heads a lot more often on the Canon. So the Epson would go for years and years, and Canon goes a year, 2 years, and then he ends up replacing the whole printer generally.
Okay.
So that's a little crazy, but yeah.
Well, for any of our volume doesn't deal with things like that. We can't afford to deal with volume and replacing printers like that.
Yeah.
My biggest problem is letting it sit too long, and then it likes to clog, but so far this one, I can fix that, with a quick cleaning, but they like to be used.
Yeah.
I recently went almost a year without using my printer, and I thought I might end up even having to get rid of it. But a couple months ago, I sat down and started cleaning it. It went through half a cartridge on some of them, but it cleaned up. I was surprised, and I've been trying to print at least once a week just to keep it. But it went a whole year.
Yeah,
Well,
you won't find that with the new printers. The new printers clog a lot easier than that old 3800 or
Is that right?
3880. Yeah.
Wow.
I found that out real quick with some of the new printers. You need to at least run them once a week, once a month. Keep those heads clean.
See,
Otherwise, you're going to do that.
my first Epson printer was an Epson 4000, and that was one of the I bought that in the early 2000s, and that was a clog monster. My new P7000 is nothing compared to that. I rarely have to clean it unless it's been a couple months, that I've used it.
Yeah.
So
Tony,
I'm totally happy with my Epsons.
Yeah. Oh, I am too. Even if they do clog from not using it, you can get them unclogged. It's just gets expensive. You go through a lot of ink.
Right.
Tony, did you have a question?
Yes, and you might have covered it, but I kind of went into a brain fog for a couple minutes. But printer paper, like matte paper.
Right.
What is a good thickness?
All right. So my Canson and my Moab LaSalle, they are not matte papers, they are photo papers. They call them 300-gram papers. So they're reasonably stiff. I don't know how to describe it any more than that, but it's not like a letterhead paper or anything like that. It's a coated, thick paper. But I don't know how to answer that anymore without, having you here and showing it to you.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe that's where I go to Allied Digital.
Yeah, they do a nice job of printing, that's for sure.
Okay. And by the way, I know you're talking about bigger printers, workforces, but 5 years ago, I got a Epson ink tank printer. And since then, we've been printing a lot color, and I still haven't had to replenish ink. And we just leave it on all the time, and sometimes it could be weeks before we print something, and it's just printing really well. So
what is that, an all-in-one type printer, or is it a photo printer?
It's an all-in-one.
Okay, that's a very different animal than a photo printer, specific photo printer.
Right. But I was just saying.
So the idea of calibrating that is difficult, and the idea of putting thick photo paper through it should handle it, but I have no experience with it.
Yeah.
I'm sitting next to my all-in-one printer, but that's for letters, it's for things like that, and it's never for anything that is going to be a photo.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Yeah, I have printed, 4x6 images on photo paper, and it looks pretty good, but
Okay,
you know, I haven't calibrated anything for a long time, so I
Yeah.
have a note here to do that.
I just have no experience with doing what you're doing, but I do know that there is a big difference with, and I don't know of any printer that is a photo printer that is cheap enough for any of us to buy that has got those ink not cartridges, but what
Yeah.
you call it.
Yeah.
I think this was listed as a photo capable printer, but I don't remember since it's,
Yeah.
you know, a long time since I've looked at what it really does.
Well, it's a 4-color printer, so it's using
That's
just
true.
the 4 basic colors instead of the bigger range of colors that you're using with your 24-inch.
My
Print.
my printer has, I think, 11 cartridges.
Yeah, I was going to say 10 or 11 cartridges. So
Right.
there's a little finer gradation in the color printing, but even that Epson all-in-one printer is not bad. The newer ones are a lot better, supposedly, but it's still only 4 colors, so you're not getting quite the rich tones. But for most people, it's probably fine for a quick 4x6 or 8x10.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you.
I had my all-in-one printer clog up one time, and rather than throw it out, I was at the end of my rope. I ordered a little kit from Amazon to push a dissolving liquid through the jets, and I set it all up and pushed them through there, and it cleaned it out. And I've been using the printer ever since without any problem. I thought if I ever got to the point where I was going to throw out my big printer, before I did that, I would try using this little kit on my real printer. It might ruin it, but
Hopefully you'll never have to experiment with that.
right.
Yeah. I think you're going to run into a problem that soon they're going to discontinue the inks, because they're slowly discontinuing inks from that time period. 2880 they just discontinued, and that's around that same time period as what your 3880 would be. I think the 3880 is slightly newer, so you still got some time, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've
Yeah.
got the small 2880. The thing has been a workhorse, unbelievable workhorse, but it's going to have to get replaced because I can't get the inks.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was just looking up the Epson printers, and they have a shirt color P700 with a 13-inch width. And I think that's similar to what the 2880 has. And that might be a possible printer for photos.
yeah.
That would be their current replacement of that size 2880.
Yeah.
And that's an excellent printer too. I mean, it's the shirt color is what my P7000 is. And so all the technical aspects are identical. It's just the carriage size is different.
Yeah. We got one, Mike wanted to know, is your studio open to the public? He goes to Door County often and would like to stop in.
My studio is always open by appointment. It's never open just to drop in because I may not be here.
Yeah.
But it's always open by appointment. In the summertime, I have quite a few people strolling through here, and I never advertise ever that it's even here. So it's by word of mouth, and that word of mouth is quite the filter as far as keeping, the raw tourist from just stopping over. But the people that come have wanted to come, and I love it.
Yeah.
I welcome people to come over here,
It's a great
Yes,
tour.
but
It's
you
a
gotta
nice
call.
studio.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, we made it to noon.
All right.
See, Dan, I told you we'd probably go over, and that's great.
Great job, Dan, as usual. Thanks a lot.
It's been my pleasure once again. Absolutely.
Yeah, we love having you here. May have to have you come back and talk more on just black and white printing, but we'll see
I'm,
what's going on.
I'm doing that one in June.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll have to see how that goes for you, and maybe I'll get you back in. I'm getting a good schedule going, but we'll definitely. I love having you come every time. I learn so much from you every time you
It's
come and talk.
always my pleasure, believe me.
So I want to let everybody know that next month we have Chris Scott talking about On1 Photo Raw. In April, I've got Simon Tolzman. His title of his talk is Life is a Highway. He's going to talk about car photography. In May, we have Ben Canute. Can't remember what he's going to be talking about yet. I've got to look that back up. June, I've got Jason Odell coming to talk. We're still working on a topic for him. I've got July and August is still open. September, I've got probably Jeff Engel talking about Africa safaris. Or it may be more, he's been shooting a lot of owls lately, and he's probably I probably get him to talk about the owls more. November, I got Brian Hansel coming as well. So we have a good lineup that I'm working on. I got to say that Simon Tolzman and Ben Canute are partially sponsored by Hunt's Photo on the East Coast. I've worked with Gary in the past, and he called me and said, hey, I see what you're doing. We'd like to sponsor a few and bring some people in. And he's helping me pull a whole bunch of photographers. So we're going to have a good range. He has quite a few different photographers we can have come and talk. So I'm just picking out some that have interesting backgrounds. So,
all right, well, I'm going to thank you all again and say goodbye.
Okay, well, thank you,
It's nice
Dan.
seeing you.
Appreciate it. Great talk as usual.
Thanks,
All right,
Dan.
thanks a lot. We'll see you all.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye now.
So, other than that,
Good lineup, Jeffrey. Thank you for doing this.
yeah, no, it's fun and it's interesting. And Gary at Hunts is being very helpful on finding a whole new range of photographers that I can pick from. And some they're sponsoring. Actually, they're sponsoring quite a few of them. So it's not going to cost me out of pocket, which is great, or wacko.
Yeah,
So,
Gary's a pretty neat guy. So
yeah, Gary's a good guy. It's a great place to buy from. I used to buy from them quite a bit, and Gary really bends over backwards helping photo clubs with getting speakers and doing supplying equipment and that. So gotta do a shout out to Gary at Hunts. So with that, unless somebody has any other questions, we'll call it a day. It was a good, interesting talk.
I just have a nasty comment to make, but I was looking for some SSD drives, 4 terabytes. And the last time I bought them was at the beginning of 2025. They've gone up over twice the price. So there's our tariffs at work, folks.
Yeah.
They've gone from 300 to over 600 bucks now. So
Oh,
Wow.
It's not just the tariffs, it's just the demand for the
yeah, most of it's tariffs. So I'll disagree with you on that one. But anyways,
Yeah.
thanks a lot. Nice job again.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And well, we'll see you next month with Chris Scott and On1 Photo Raw.